to scale a real estate business, mostly you just need capital, right? If you have the fundamental skill set of looking at what's a good deal, doing due diligence, you can scale through capital, right? So it's not a very human capital intensive business. Whereas if you're buying businesses and you're wanting to grow and scale businesses, you just need a lot more human capital.
Elements.
There's a lot of variables and it's just trickier. So that is one of the reasons why we decided to turn our attention into focusing on real estate. People
Yeah.
need homes, right? And another big reason why we went into this thesis is because we looked at the stats. There's actually a 4.8 million deficit of single family homes across the US. And this is pent up from the 2010 financial crisis. So there's been this persistent pattern of underbuilding. And so now with this kind of deficit and growing deficit, it's going to take all the top 50 home builders in America to build at max capacity 10 years to catch up.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Estamos en un episodio más de Real Estate Talks. Bienvenidos. ¿Cómo estás, Lala? Lo estamos haciendo remoto en esta ocasión porque tenemos una invitadaza de California. ¿Cómo has estado, Lala?
Así es, Gaby, muy bien. Pues nada, muy contenta de retomar el tema remoto que nos permite también tener otro tipo de, hablar de otros mercados, tener invitados de otras regiones. Entonces, por eso lo decimos ser así en esta ocasión y muy contenta de estar aquí con nosotros Alice Chen. Alice, hi, Alice.
Hi Lala, hi Gabby. Nice to see you guys.
Nice to see you. Alice, you were telling us you were in the Bay Area, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, Alice, we're going to give the microphone to you. I want just to tell our audience what you are doing right now, but more important, how did you start working into real estate? Why real estate? And how did you develop your life in it right now?
Sure. Yeah. And thanks for inviting me to the show. So, I'm a partner at Pender Hastings Capital. We are a real estate private equity firm, and we have funds in Canada. We just launched our first fund in the United States as well, focused on land development. So, my background is actually more in private equity. Real estate is an area that we're very bullish on right now for a lot of reasons I'm going to touch on a little bit later. But my journey is very interesting. I started out as a corporate lawyer. So I've been an entrepreneur for 16 years. So I think 19 years ago, I practiced law for 3 years. So 19 years ago, I graduated from law school article in Canada and practiced in Vancouver, BC. So at a very big national law firm in Canada. And I practiced in securities law, mergers and acquisitions. I was always very interested in using law to help me get into business. But, when I was younger, I didn't quite understand what kind of business I wanted to get into. So going to law school was a great skill set building exercise, just so I have a core fundamental skill set to leverage on. So since I, went into law, I practiced, but I found it very interesting. I learned to be very composed. I learned negotiations. I learned, the framework of securities law environment. But what I didn't like was actually working for the senior partners, right? So I remember many days where it's a Friday afternoon, 4 o'clock. They would come into my office and drop files onto my desk, right? So there goes my weekend. And I'm a big traveler. So a lot of times this happens right before my big trips as well. I don't know why, but it's just always happened like that. So I said, you know what? I've learned enough. I know there's much more to learn by me exploring in business. So I left the field of law to go into business myself 16 years ago. So hard to believe. It's been 16 years. I've done businesses in different industries. I've done it across international trade, technology, financial services, of course, private equity. So I've been a fund of fund manager in Canada, aggregating the best real estate funds in the country. So yeah, so throughout this journey, just had a lot of fun and adventure in business. I, founded, co-founded, operated, exited 3 businesses by now. And I continue to have fun every day. So it doesn't feel like work for me. Every day I come to work, it feels like I'm just in flow. Like this is just me being who I am. So why real estate private equity? My business partner, James, and I met 12 years ago. So he was actually my original mentor in finance. And I met him because at that time, in around 2013, I had exited my first business and amassed my first bit of personal capital
It
to
was a
invest.
business in what industry?
It was an international trade. Yeah,
Okay.
so it was actually, so I created a two-sided marketplace to help Canadian wine producers export to China. And that went really well. I just was, very on point on the timing in the subject matter. And I created an environment where I kind of matched the sellers of wine and the buyers of wine. And the wine would be, we're not talking about a couple cases, we're talking about a couple containers. Every container, a couple $100,000. So almost like an entry level house. So much like what you guys do in real estate, kind of matching initially getting into the real estate business. Most people start out as a realtor, right? So matching the buy side to the sell side. That's just kind of what you start with. So that business cemented me as top 40 on a 40 in 2013 by Business in Vancouver. So I had that under my belt. And my second business was actually
And
helping.
you sold it.
What was that?
You sold it.
Yes, yeah. So that one actually morphed into a second business, which is helping the same clientele, their high net worth family offices, mostly out of China, invest in businesses in Western US and Western Canada, mostly Western Canada. So my second business then sold to PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC. It's an international accounting firm. And and then from there, other things, took place and I went into other ventures. So going back to what I was talking about, so I met James because around that time, 12 years ago, I had my, first bit of personal capital to invest. I knew I wanted to learn everything about private equity, right? So I've been hearing about it. I've read a lot about alternative investments. If you look at the family offices of today, high net worth individuals, a lot of people actually are pretty heavy on private equity. Like my portfolio is actually like 80% plus in alts, what we call alts, alternative investments. So yeah, funds and different type of strategies. They're not necessarily just public stocks and bonds or real estate that's tangible. So I was very curious about it. So then, I met James. He showed me the ropes. Like I invested, I was an early investor in his early funds, did really well. And then from there, fundraise for his fund. And then that company went on to become a really massive company, 24 portfolio companies and about 800 million of annual combined revenue. He's raised more than 500 million of institutional capital. So throughout that journey, it was a lot of skills building, and of course, I broadened to learn from other fund managers or asset managers in Canada, and that's when I became a fund of fund manager myself. So during COVID, I relocated to California to join family here, and at that point, James had exited from his private equity venture. And so we reconnected, and it turned out that we had both been very interested in looking at real estate more closely, right? So real estate is actually a better asset class than traditional private equity of buying businesses. Why? Because less moving parts. To scale a real estate business, mostly you just need capital, right? If you have the fundamental skill set of looking at what's a good deal, doing due diligence, you can scale through capital, right? So it's not a very human capital intensive business. Whereas if you're buying businesses and you're wanting to grow and scale businesses, you just need a lot more human capital.
Elements.
There's a lot of variables and it's just trickier. So that is one of the reasons why we decided to turn our attention into focusing on real estate, right? So then the question is, okay, well, real estate is everything under the sun. There's so many strategies, right? And I had a brief chat with both of you before we got on the show. There's just so many things you can do. So how do you choose something, right? So for a private equity firm like ours, we recognize that real estate is actually hyper local, right? So what makes sense as a strategy in one market doesn't necessarily translate. So in our home market of Vancouver, BC, we specifically focus on what's called multiplex developments. So that's turning single family lot or single family home, tear it down and then turn it into a multiplex, right? So it could be a fourplex, it could be a sixplex. So in California, we have the same thing. In Seattle, same thing. Maybe in Austin too. I'm not sure, but it's ADU, right? So increasing density by building attached ADU or detached ADU. So we specifically focus on that in Vancouver.
So those are like a condo regime. So you like get a single family and whatever the city allows you to put 2 or 3 or 4 units.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so condo conversions.
And I'm
But you
imagining
do condo
Seattle,
conversion.
Vancouver is normally in the urban size where it's more condensed and the city is just like in Austin is happening, what the city is allowing more to like one single family can have up to 6 units depending on the square footage of the land, but it's the same case for Vancouver, Seattle, and I'm assuming
Yes.
San Francisco. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that's what we focus on in Vancouver. We probably will replicate this business strategy across other urban centers in the States as well. But in the meantime, we spent the last couple years looking at, okay, what is a good strategy to go in, right? As a private equity firm, what we want is a problem that's big enough, right? That's not small, because we want a big enough problem that we can work on for the next 5, 10 years, because we're going to put in a lot of energy, a lot of bandwidth, human capital into digging into one specific strategy and building infrastructure and ecosystem around it. We want to make sure it's something that's sustainable, right? Something that can be sustained over time. But we don't want it to be such a big macro bet that we're then running into competitors like a BlackRock, for example, like the huge private equity. So we have to find that sweet spot. So something that's not, kind of lower barrier to entry. So for example, a lot of multifamily syndications, that's just really a marketing exercise. If you are a good marketer, it's not that hard to buy a multifamily apartment building, do some renovations, and then charge higher rent. I mean, that exercise is quite simple
Yes, if you're in a market that's growing, like it's actually, I mean, I've run businesses myself. I still run my businesses in Mexico, and compared, like doing multifamily, as you're saying, which is what I've been doing now for the past 4 years, it's easier because it's just
Yeah.
like, it's just renovate, do good operations, and you're gonna manage, especially if you're in a growing market. I agree with you.
Yes,
Compared to like
exactly.
a business where you have like people and the service and there's so many moving parts.
Customer
Yes,
service.
exactly. Yeah, so then, we looked at multifamily in Texas actually. So James was mostly in Dallas the entire year of 2022, and talked to 200 different parties in that ecosystem. But because the interest rate started to hike up towards the end of 2022, we saw the writing on the wall. And then we also feel like the space was super crowded, right? So unless you're some sort of, I don't know, radio personality, celebrity, or you've been in the market for a long time like you, Lala, we didn't feel like we have any advantage in that. So we left it. And then so we then explore different theses, like we explore single family home building en masse at scale in Florida. And then the hurricanes happened, right? So we started to make us feel like, okay, well, maybe that's not the best thing to do. But what we've started to do is actually dig into this thesis of land development last year. So, more than, I would say probably, more than a year ago, we started to really deep dive into strategy. So what is land development, and why do we pick that as our main strategy for our fund? So land development is entitlements as well as horizontal development. And what we are is that we're the capital partners to land developers, whether entitlements or horizontal developments. So land developers that turn raw land into finished lots for national or regional home builders, right? So we're talking about home builders like D.R. Horton, Lennar, Toll Brothers. So they turn raw land into finished lots for these home builders to come in and start building houses, right? So typically, it's community projects of 500, 1,000, 2,000 homes, those kind of projects. So this is called pure play land development. So we fund the equity portion of that kind of project. So that's what we do today.
Would you tell us the difference between, you say, entitlement and horizontal development? Would you tell us the difference on those two?
Yeah, that's a great question. So entitlement, it's paperwork, right? So we were talking about paperwork a little bit earlier.
And politics.
And
Yes,
yeah, politics,
Politics.
yes.
Yeah,
yes,
because you gotta
exactly.
make sure
Yeah.
all the neighbors and all the people and the city approves and that.
Mhm.
Yes, exactly. So entitlements, you think of it as like you have this piece of raw land. To realize its potential, you want to get it to a place where it can be built into, like for us, we look at residential, so built into as many homes as possible, right? So what does that involve? Well, step one, go to your municipality or county office and you got to do a series of paperwork, right, to get that approved. And Lala, you're very much right. It's you know, you got to play a little politician. You got to get the approvals of the council. You got to do the kind of human element massaging of the situation to get it across, right? So I think that part creates a natural barrier to entry. So I've met not too many entitlement specialists, but the ones I met, they're very smart, and then they are a specific type of personality. But they, when they really focus on it, and then they develop a skill set, it's a very prized skill set. So I would say entitlement is the paperwork. Think of it as paperwork. So turning raw land into lots that can be developed, right, on paper. So then once you have that approval in place and you got it entitled, the zoning permits and all of that, then the next step is what's called horizontal development. So why is it horizontal? Well, it's because you're developing roads and infrastructure. So you're developing this way, horizontally. You're not developing vertically into a house or into a building, right? So that's why we call horizontal development. So we typically fund projects where the either it's for entitlement process, or if it's entitled already, we fund horizontal developers that are turning entitled land into buildable lots, like
Like
actual.
building, like putting services, water,
Exactly.
electricity, and all that, right?
Yes, yes. And so typically the horizontal developers, they have construction background. They know how to run teams. Like they do that, you know, and then I feel like sometimes they overlap. Like sometimes some of our operating partners, they will do both. But typically the different companies they just start to really specialize and branch out into one of the other.
So it's from raw to entitlement, then you move to another party, or sometimes if same one, but mostly most times to the middle part, horizontal development, and then the final product goes to D.R. Horton or Taylor Morrison,
Correct.
and then to the end consumer.
Yes, correct. Yeah. And one thing that's really great about our fund is that we only invest in projects that already have a forward purchase contract with the home builder. So, for example,
Right.
our horizontal developer will not start doing any work unless they have a contract in hand from D.R. Horton. D.R.
Mhm.
Horton will say, buy these lots from us, $30,000 a lot. And then once you're done the 2 years of a horizontal development, we will buy it back from you, $70,000 a lot, right? So these are just fictitious numbers, but typically what
Oh,
I'm,
wait a second. So D.R. Horton or whichever builder
yeah.
buys the land, and then the person that does, someone else does a horizontal development, and then they sell it back to D.R. Horton?
Yeah, so typically, let's say if it's two different parties doing the entitlements and the horizontal development, right? So let's assume the land is now entitled. So
Mhm.
D.R. Horton would typically own the land at this point,
Mhm.
but they don't want to do the horizontal development themselves. So then
Gotcha.
they would say, hey, horizontal developer, here's here's I don't know, 500 paper lots that's entitled. Buy the lots from us at $30,000 per lot. You do what you do. You do the horizontal development, you put in the roads and infrastructure, water, sewage, all of that. Once you're done, we're going to buy the land back from you. Now the land is actually buildable paths. We'll buy it back from you at $70,000 per lot. So
Gotcha.
our horizontal developers have to buy the entitled land, and then they do the work, and then but they know how much they're going to exit at, right? So they know how much DR Horton's buying back from them. So
And it's already a buyer's signature on it.
yes,
So you as a fund of that project, even though it might take 2 years or 3 years, whatever it takes, you already have a secure buyer at the end. It's not
correct,
what the market is going to say at that time, and we don't know what the price per lot is going to be.
correct,
Mhm.
correct. Yeah.
And how do you find the opportunities, these opportunities? Like what markets do you focus on? How do you decide between markets? And then once you get to a market, how do you decide what projects to invest in or not?
Yeah, so we are typically seeing projects in the Sun Belt states. So in, Texas and Florida, the Carolinas, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arizona as well. So a lot of these states. And it's not so much we're, we're preferring this market over another market. It's more driven by the home builders' demand. So the home builders have their own data that's driving them to want to build in certain pockets of the country. So DR Horton, for example, they have 81 profit centers. So it's almost like they're a huge multi-billion-dollar company, but 81 small businesses, right? Regional businesses. So they will dictate where they're going to build, right? So once they dictate where they're going to build, then they drive the entitlement companies to do the entitlement. Then they drive the horizontal developers to do that. So it's a reverse engineering process that
Mhm.
happens. So it's not so much, oh, we think, I mean, I think Austin is great, but it's not a process where, oh, we think Austin is great, so let's go and entitle this parcel of land, or let's go and do horizontal development. And then 3 years later, 2 years later, you hope that there's a buyer that can come and take it from you. No, we don't do it that way. We do it in the reverse engineering way with, different safeguards.
That's a great way to do it because somebody already is doing the research for you, and they also sign in on the
Exactly.
product that this horizontal developer is gonna do. And just out of curiosity, I saw a lot of new construction, and normally these big developers or developments have several builders. Like you have a Taylor Morrison selling next to Toll Brothers and selling next to this other, I don't know, Drew Homes. So they all work together in the beginning, or they each individual have their own horizontal developer working for them.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect question. I was just going to touch on that. So let's say if our horizontal developer has a contract with DR for 1,000 homes in the beginning, right? But we always want to layer on different risk mitigation measures. So they, even though they have this contract in hand, signed ink, to be sure, right? Because we don't know what the world looks like, what the market looks like in 2 years or 3 years when something like that scale is done for 1,000 homes. So typically, the horizontal developer will actually shop it around and find secondary and tertiary home builder to come in. So maybe in 3 years, DR Horton, they don't want the 1,000 lots anymore. They want to actually they still want 500, but they don't want to take down 1,000. So at that point, you have your secondary and tertiary buyers. So then you can go and say, hey, now there's 250. Do you want this 250? Right. And as long as they have this agreement on the different product kind in that community, it's
Mhm.
a nice mix, right? So maybe DR Horton's 500 would be starter homes, but KB has like a more of a move up home feel, right? So as long
Mhm.
as they don't feel like they're in competition, those type of combinations are very welcome.
Mm-hmm. Or even like I'm thinking of a specific community here. It's called Traviso, where Taylor Morrison has within the community, so big of a community, but within the community they have the startup, which you can buy them at I don't know 700,000. But the same Taylor Morrison has another collection down the road in the same Treviso area that you cannot find anything under 2 million, but
Mhm.
it's the same builder with three different collections within the community.
Yes.
You also
Yes.
have the Toll Brother doing the same
Yeah.
thing and the Drew Home doing the same thing.
Yeah. So I see those combos a lot as well. And I think that's a very wise decision to kind of mix and match. And a lot of times they, will also focus on, there's a trend that focuses on the amenities, right? So maybe you want to put a school there, or you want to put a community center there, playgrounds, just so I'm seeing a lot of these type of creative solutions by the home builders. So all of them are very bullish. So even though right now in the news a lot of kind of negative sentiments about home building, but you guys can probably feel it. It's still very
Yes,
strong.
the market's
Builders
still
are very
moving, it's
bullish.
still growing, it's full
Yeah.
It's
employment
still
is
building. Mm-hmm.
Yes. People
yeah.
need homes, right? And another big reason why we went into this thesis is because we looked at the stats. There's actually a 4.8 million deficit of single family homes across the US. And this is pent up from the 2010 financial crisis. So there's been this persistent pattern of underbuilding. And so now with this kind of deficit and growing deficit, um, it's going to take all the top 50 home builders in America to build at max capacity 10 years to catch up, right? So we're talking about DR Horton, America's number one builder, $35 billion annual revenue. Like even at that scale, they're only building 100 homes a year, 100,000, sorry, 100,000. So So yeah, so that's a very small number compared to the deficit amount.
Yeah.
And Alice, how does your fund work? Like, say someone wants to invest with you, like, it's like, so it's a blind pool fund, and then you decide which projects to invest, or
Yes.
how does it work?
Yeah, so we're what's called semi-specified fund. So it's not completely like we are always doing due diligence on the projects. So we have 5 operating partners right now on the roster that we have already done due diligence on. So we're comfortable with them. And we have to assess their pipeline is always growing, right? It's dynamic, always evolving. So we're in constant communication with them. Like we have biweekly, like bi-monthly meetings with them. And then we are always looking at projects. So we have a very good pulse on what's happening and we zero in on the projects that we like. So it's not completely blind because we have our buy box, like we have our criteria. We have a 12-page due diligence process that we kind of run every projects through. So we're constantly, looking at the performance and looking at and talking to them about what's happening and doing due diligence. Yeah, so that's what we do. And our fund one is targeting $15 million close. And so we will be investing in anywhere from 4 to 6 projects.
Okay, got it. So right now you're in the phase of fundraising, and then
Yes.
you're gonna start deploying later on.
Yes. Yeah, we're looking to deploy into our first project later this month, actually.
And where is this project at?
So this project, we're looking at 2. So one is actually in Texas. There's a place called Cotton Gin. I don't know if that's
Where
yeah, I
is
think
that?
that's the name of the town or the area. And then there's an area called Auburndale in Florida between Lakeland and Orlando. So we're looking at 2 projects.
Got it. Very interesting.
Yes, very, very interesting, Alice. Thank you so much for sharing the information. We'll make sure to share all you how people can reach out to you, or you guys can always email us and we'll put you in contact. But we wanted to talk to you because it is one of those areas of real estate that we normally don't see. We don't
Yeah.
and people don't know how to invest. I mean, people don't know that there are funds behind it and they can be part of that section of that construction before even it's a house. So it's always interesting to learning about these new avenues to invest in something that is back up. It's not actual a brick and mortar thing, but it's a part of the real estate that will become one.
It's a
Yes,
way
exactly.
to put their money to work in real estate. So what's the time, like the minimum, the time frame that you
Yeah, so typically the projects are about 24 months to 30 months, and the 30 months would be the outside limit. We don't want to invest anything longer than that, right? Just given that the world's changing pretty rapidly. So our fund is a 3-year fund. We wrap up by the end of the third year. So like the 2 projects I mentioned, the one in Texas, that's a 28-month period, and then the one in Florida is actually quite short. So that one's only 13 months. So we
But the
like,
investor will see the return after this. So your fund, so they invest, you close right now, you're fundraising, you close the raise, you deploy the capital in the projects that match this buy box you have. And then when will the investor see the return on their money?
whenever the project actually exits, and that's when we do the
There
distribution.
will be like partial like distributions.
Yes.
Okay, depending
Yes.
on how you close.
And do you
Okay.
have any more tickets or depending on the
Yeah,
project?
so we work with accredited investors and we have 2 classes of shares. So minimum is 100,000.
Okay.
And then that's a targeted 25% IRR. So yeah, so pref of 12%, preferred return 12%. So which means if we don't make 12% for the investor for per year, we don't get anything as a GP. So pref 12%, but after that we do a 50-50 split. So taking that 12% all the way up to 25.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. Well, thank you so much, Alice, for your time and for the people that you know. Y perdón que me voy a cambiar al español, pero ya saben, si quieren contactar a Alice directamente, les vamos a dejar la información, pero también nos pueden comunicarse con nosotros a hola@lalaagaby.com para aprender un poquito más de este asset de real estate, que no hemos hablado mucho de este, Lala, así que yo creo que tendremos a Alice de regreso, ¿no?
Así es, pues muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much, Alice, for being here and sharing with our audience. Yo soy Lala Elizondo
Y yo soy Gaby Proctor,
y esto fue Real
Real
Estate
Estate Talks.
Si llegaste hasta aquí es porque te gustó la información y estás interesado en invertir en real estate en Estados Unidos.
Para esto hemos creado un entrenamiento que te va a simplificar este camino, ya sea que seas un inversionista por primera vez o que seas un inversionista sofisticado.
En la descripción de este episodio está la liga que te llevará a este entrenamiento.
O bien búscanos en Instagram como @invierte con Lala y Gaby y comenta con la palabra invertir en cualquiera de nuestras publicaciones y así te mandamos la liga a este entrenamiento.
Muchísimas gracias por habernos escuchado. Nos vemos en el siguiente. Escucha un episodio nuevo de Real Estate Talks cada semana.
En tu plataforma favorita para escuchar podcasts.
Ponte en contacto con nosotros en lalaagaby.com.